The supply chain carbon footprint can be reduced in many ways, but in most of the cases not eliminated. Reaching carbon neutrality or intermediate sustainability targets could require voluntary or mandatory CO2 compensation. Alessia Barone, Italy Country Manager for Sendeco2, will introduce us in the European CO2 market. Welcome, Alessia.
Today, I will talk to you about the CO2 markets, compliance and voluntary ones, and I will examine how these tools can contribute to climate change mitigation. The Kyoto Protocol to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, adopted on 1997 and entered into force on 2005, establishes binding and quantified targets for the limitation and reduction of greenhouse gases in the ratifying countries. It's based on the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities. It acknowledges that individual countries have different capabilities in combating climate change and therefore puts the obligation to reduce current emissions on developed countries on the basis that they are historically responsible for the current level of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. To facilitate the achievement of the objectives, together with the adoption of internal measures, the Kyoto Protocol provides for the use of tools that, in order to stimulate virtuous processes of sustainable development at a global level, allow investments to be made for the transfer of clean technologies or, in any case, aimed at reducing emissions in developing countries. These tools are market-based mechanisms, the so-called flexible mechanisms. The international emission trading that permits the exchange of emission credits between installations covered by the directive, and the clean development mechanisms and joint implementation that are linking mechanisms under the Kyoto Protocol that allow industrialized and economies in transition countries to carry out environmental projects in developing countries and, at the same time, generate emission reduction credits or emission reduction units for the countries or individuals' companies promoting the interventions. The European Union Emission Trading Scheme is a cornerstone of the European policy to combat climate change and a key tool for reducing, on a cost-effective basis, greenhouse gas emissions from the regulated sectors. The system covers 14% of European emissions from the power sector, manufacturing industry, and aviation with the European Economic Area. Now, into its fourth trading phase, the ETS has undergone several revisions to maintain the system's alignment with the overarching European climate policy objectives. The evolution of the system has seen some important trends: the replacement of free allocation with allocation by action, the gradual extension of the market to new types of greenhouse gases, to new industrial sectors and new countries included, and connection with other emission trading markets. In the fourth trading period, the linear reduction factor is to be raised within the emission cap to be reduced by 2.2% per year. But how emission trading works? It operates according to the principle of cap and trade. A cap is set which establishes the maximum amount of greenhouse gases that can be emitted by the installations that fall within the system. Within this limit, companies can buy or sell allowances based on their needs. Once a year, all companies must return an emission allowance for every ton of CO2 equivalent emitted. A limited number of units is assigned for free to some companies based on harmonized allocation rules applied throughout Europe. Companies that do not receive emission allowances for free or where the allowances received are not sufficient to cover the emissions produced must buy them at auction from other companies or from brokers. Conversely, those who have emission allowances in excess can sell them. If a company does not comply with compliance obligations, heavy penalties are applied. Every year in March-April, industrial installations and aircraft operators included in the European ETS are required to meet their obligations by completing several operations in the Union Registry in order to reach a status of compliance. Appoint a verifier, enter the tons of CO2 equivalent emitted in the previous year, and have this value validated by the verifier. Surrendered an amount of allowances against the emissions verifier.
Working conditions in logistics sites have never been the priority in recent years for real estate operators and contractors.
Thank you, Sandro. So now we are going to talk about park life. This is a new initiative which Prologis Europe is running in our countries, and it's a project focused on the well-being of our customers' employees. And in particular, we are going to provide new facilities and new services in our park in order to improve the quality of life of the workers during their working day. And also we are trying with this initiative to make our parks more attractive for the workers. Some example of these new facilities could be recreational spaces. Here we can see some example of what we realized in our park around Europe, and we are proud to show you the basketball field that we realized in Bologna Interporto, where we have many buildings. But other example could be also spaces to promote social interactions, such as bars, restaurants, or gyms, or services that normally we can find in the center of a city, but it's difficult to find in a logistic area. In order to approach this project in Italy, we put in place a group of external consultants as architects, designers, landscape specialists, and also the Department of Psychology of the University Cattolica of Milan. And with this team, we tried to analyze the current situation of our logistic parks and what aspects could impact the psychological balance of the worker and the personal stress. And we realized that some characteristics are recurrent in all our parks. In particular, the parks built in the past, almost 10 or 15 years ago. For example, there is a lot of noise, pollution, there is a lack of green spaces, and also the shape of the buildings can give a bad sensation to the feeling to the workers. This aspect could also impact the motivation of the workers and the productivity. So they could have a negative impact on the business of our customers. Moving on, we would like to show you our pilot project in Prologis Park Lodi. Actually, the Lodi is in Somalia, close to Lodi. We choose this park to start with our project because it's composed by 5 buildings and occupied by only one tenant, which is a company leader in the logistic field.
In the park. For this particular project, we've decided to dedicate this work to the art director, Enrico Ceroni. He is an expert in organizing big exhibitions on the global level, and he is also an artist with a big experience. He has found 8 artists that are very similar because they've chosen the same job of their life, but they're completely different in their characters, in their approaches they put in their works. For example, let's see our urban art gallery under the sky. So Enrico has studied very good this design in order to make the visitor feel comfortable, even though he is not very familiar with the art. So if he starts his journey, if you see the white line, he will see the first work that will probably seem not very easy to understand. But now if you proceed, you will see the second one that will permit you to understand a bit better, and so on and so on. So in this case, the visitor of our urban art gallery will feel very comfortable and will be very satisfied from his visit. So let's start. Here we go. We've got Luca Font with his 20 years experience. Luca was inspired by such words like evolution, continuous change, courage. In fact, you see here the person that is going through the continuous evolution, continuous progress in order to catch the final goal. Here we've got Hitness. Hitness was inspired by the birds that are doing their seasonal migrations and the places that they're visited during these trips. Here we've got Mate. Mate has used the courage and change through innovation for his work. Here we've got Sia Creative, together with another artist who worked on the water tanks. We've got here his work that is called Tears and Superimpositions, with 3 different colors and levels. The blue color represents the values of the company through the words like passion, inclusion and diversity, and other. The second color, green, what's significant, the particular attention of both companies, Prologis and Siva, to green and well-being. And the third part, white part, is representing the people who live it daily. We've got here Max. He was inspired by the contemporary work of Andy Warhol, Tomato Soup. We've got also Joyce with his continuous labyrinths. In Wezet, that he was inspired by the Infinity, the poem of the Giacomo Leopardi. And finally, Ethnic with his Green Revolution, with the combination of the city and the nature.
Hi, my name is Paolo Angoni. I am the Real Estate, Energy and Efficiency Manager of Poste Italiane. And today I will briefly talk to you about the Poste Italiane decarbonization of real estate and logistics. To go more in detail about this specific pillar, we have defined and announced in March by our CEO two specific targets. The first one is to reduce emission about 30% compared to 2020 in 4 years. So with a target to reduce 30% by 2025, and to get the carbon neutrality in 2030 with a huge advance compared to the targets of the United Nations and European Community. If we look deeply in which are the levers we are going to use in the next years, especially for the first 4 years, many of them are related to real estate management, particularly when we are speaking, for example, for one of the levers that is the green fleet, so the transition to electric vehicles for the final delivery. It is impacted the real estate management because we need to create the infrastructure to recharge this fleet. On our real estate, we are creating 600 new photovoltaic plants in order to produce approximately 20 gigawatt-hour every year of renewable energy. We want to transform in the next 2 years some delivery center in structure buildings that are totally carbon neutral, changing the energy we are going to use there, but also with tree planting. We want also we have a specific target to reach 98% of renewable energy coming from renewable sources. Also today, most of our electric energy is bought from with a guarantee of origin for renewable sources, but we are going to increase this number. And last but not least, we are working on more than 2,000 buildings in order to transform them in smart buildings. It means that we're going to install in these buildings gateway and sensors and everything related to collect data and actuate changes in order to manage in a better ways all the plants. I'm speaking about heating, cooling, and lighting, but increasing also the comfort of the buildings for the people working and for the clients coming in it. If we look at an example of one typical post office building, what we are going to do around these type of buildings, we are going to install the photovoltaic panels, as we said. We are going to reuse and collect and reuse the water, storing it in areas underground that we have available from previous project. We are going to create also an infrastructure for recharge our vehicles, but also EV vehicles of our clients, so open to the public. We are going to do to renew our green area around our buildings in order to absorb more CO2. We are already changing these post box offices in order to make them smart so that they can collect data and provide services directly. Which type of data? With a LoRa network, we are going to collect data about the weather, about temperature, humidity, about the environment conditions in the area. We are going to install inside the building smart building solutions and lighting. And we are trying to work also on the envelope insulation in order to increase the efficiency of our plants. Moving to the fleet, that is also a big portion of our CO2 production and our network. We are going to work on around 30,000 vehicles, that is the overall dimension of our fleet. As you can see from left to right, we are going to act on most of our fleet in the next years. In the next 3 years, mainly to introduce many electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, or low emission vehicles to substitute the current fleet.